Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Haidar Al-Hakim, your host on the Surgical Spirit podcast. And today we have Dr. Pauline Morris. How are you, Dr. Pauline?
Hey, I am very well, thank you. I've been enjoying some time at home because I've got a new grandbaby, a grandson. So that's kept my spirits up most days, except the days when he's screaming, "Holy hell!" Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you brought it up because sometimes, if you ask a woman, you're a grandmother now, they do get upset because it kind of
Oh no, not
really.
me.
Ah,
You know what? I am very grateful for every morning that I open my eyes. Everything is still in place and pretty much works the same way as it did the day before. So I will never, ever, ever begrudge waking up another morning. And if that means I get to be a grandma, that's even better.
so how's it been? What's it like? Because I'm not a granddad, so
Ooh.
yeah.
You know what? It's really, I mean, I'm not usually a person that's lost for words, but it's just amazing. I mean, I've watched my baby have a baby. You know, it's just, and every time I look at him, it's like he's a bigger miracle than she was. She's heard me say that, so she's over it now. But, it's just amazing to think, here's another, and this sounds pretty selfish, but hey, and a bit self-centered, but it's like, oh my gosh, there's another little piece of me in the world. That is just so amazing. And he's just adorable. He's got a lot of personality already. His parents have some exciting times to come, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And has he sort of taken most of his stuff from you or from your daughter? What do you
Oh,
think so
well,
far?
he's only 6 weeks old, so it's hard to tell, but he's pretty stubborn, and that runs in our family. So, he doesn't like to sleep. He's already worked out that when he sleeps, things changes, and he will yell to not fall asleep. So it's really that must be from me because I'm always looking for the next adventure, and you know, you can always sleep later, get stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, you put people to sleep, so that's your job.
It is, and it's an unfortunate necessity in life to help people live better lives, more healthy lives. So you got to take some good with the bad. So yeah, sometimes you just have to sleep.
So, talking about stubbornness, when did you realize that you are stubborn?
Oh, um, I think I kind of worked that out from very young. I didn't think I was being stubborn. I just thought I was just being interested. But that was often interpreted as being stubborn because I grew up in the West Indies, and children are supposed to be seen and not heard. But I was always the one sort of sticking up my hand and asking questions and poking at things that I wasn't supposed to be poking at. And despite people not encouraging that behavior in me, it persisted. So I suppose in a way there was a stubbornness that I developed very early in life about wanting to know more and learn more and be more knowledgeable. And I was always asking why. And as a child, you just didn't say why. It was considered rude. It's like, don't do that. Well, why? Yeah, that was a good way to get in trouble. So yeah, I've always been stubborn. I've never taken it for granted what people tell me is the truth. So I always push back a little bit, and that caused me some interesting what's the word I want, situations throughout my life and my career in medicine. But hey, I'm better off for it where I am now, for sure.
Could you give us a story of when you were younger and your sort of stubbornness um, got you in trouble?
Oh wow. Uh, I decided that I wanted to know more about what my grandmother did. My grandmother was an incredible woman, and I always say she had an Excel spreadsheet in her head before anybody had an idea what an Excel spreadsheet was. She was pretty amazing, but she was very of the opinion that you're seen and not heard, and we would clash very often. my grandmother and I. Not so much with my mother, because I kind of worked out that my mother was a different kind of person, and there was kind of no point trying to get information out of her. But my grandmother and I, we clashed a lot when I was little, because I was forever going, but why, but why, but why not, and why do you do this? And she would get really fed up of me, you know. she'd really, you know, be like, why aren't you like your brothers and sisters and just leave me alone and do your own thing? But I don't know, somewhere in my head, I worked out that she was, I don't know, I guess a volume of information. And I just kept pushing at her. And, you know, every now and then that would get me into trouble. and, but eventually, by the time I was a teenager, she kind of relented. And she just, and anytime I asked a question after that, she would give me an honest answer, much to the despair of my mother, because my mother didn't think that I should know many of these things that she would tell me. So that caused a little bit of friction in my relationship with my mother as well, because then I would say things to my mother and she would not like what I say to her. So there wasn't one particular thing. I mean, it happened in school as well. I was always sent to the back of the class because I was asking too many questions and disrupting the class, and it was a flavor of my childhood rather than one particular story per se.
Whereabouts in the Caribbean were you?
Barbados.
Okay. Okay. And what was it like there? You know, I mean, I presume this was back in the, you know, sort of 80s and 90s.
Bless you. Yeah, we'll stick with the 80s. Yeah, we'll stick with that. Barbados is wonderful. It's really great. It's a tiny little island. It's only 166 square miles. We've got the Caribbean Sea on the west coast and the Atlantic Ocean on the east coast. So the east coast is a bit rougher, and it's not so touristy because it's a bit more craggy and rough, and you know. But it was an amazing place to grow up, and I was lucky in that, although the Caribbean is considered one region, I suppose it's a little bit like the European Union. It's one region, but every little country and island is different and has its own nuances and languages and different demographics. And my father was from Panama and my mother was from Dominica, which had a heavy French influence. So she spoke my mother and my grandmother spoke a French patois, which enriches your life to no end when you can speak more than one language, as you know.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful place to grow up. It was very relaxed. You know, the beaches are amazing, white sand, and it's something that I miss very much. The diversity of people and, you know, the things that you were exposed to made my world bigger than I think it perhaps could have been. But again, my mother and my grandmother was also very much responsible for that. It was a wonderful place to grow up because you were allowed to be a child. I never felt that I had to be more than I currently was at the time, which I think is something that even the generation of my daughter and my daughter and her friends, they've lost that. They're always chasing something already as children. And you didn't have that in the Caribbean at that time. So it was a very relaxed place to grow up.
Yeah, yeah, and what's, you know, the predominant flavor in Barbados? What is it? What is it famous for? You know, what does it taste like?
Surf, sea, and sand. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
that's what it's known for. The beautiful stretches of white sandy beaches, very calm. Like I said,
Yeah.
on the west side of the island. It's also well known for really good food, and it's also known. Well, COVID has changed that. It used to be known. Hopefully, will be again for the. I use the word carnival because that's a word that everybody recognizes, that happened at the end of summer every year. And it's a really interesting one because it has a historical background to it. And it came about as a celebration at the end of the summer where the last of the canes had been cut. So it was a time when the slaves could relax for a little bit, for a brief period of time. And the whole festival developed out of that brief period of freedom, for lack of a better word, that the slaves had once the crop had been fully harvested. So it comes from that historical background, and it's a really wonderful celebration of music and life and costumes and dancing and music, and it's another thing I miss very much.
Yeah, yeah. And I think carnival's a French word, I think. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I mean, what we don't call it carnival. Other islands like Trinidad, Dominica, they call it carnival. We call it literally cropova or kadumant, which is the parlance of the way the way we speak English in Barbados. So I'm not sure about
Yeah.
the origin of carnival, but yeah, in Barbados it's called kadumant and cropova.
And you know, that's English or a French or a Portuguese word
It's
or
mostly English.
yeah, yeah.
It's mostly English. In the Caribbean, there because of the heavy influence of different European countries, there was the Portuguese, there was the
Yeah.
British, the French, the Spanish, um, and then of course there was the influx of Africans that were brought over with during the slave period, and then after that, they were with the emancipation of slavery. There was the second workforce that was brought in was that of from the Indian continent.
Hmm.
So there's a huge demographic of that population within the West Indies. But because of the political warfare that occurred during those times, islands changed hands. And because of that, the influences are peppered differently throughout each island.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
for instance, Mother's Island, Dominica, there's a very heavy French influence. In Trinidad, there's a very Indian continent influence. And that's all because of how things developed over the course of the years. So it's a very interesting place to live.
Yeah.
We've got everything.
And Barbados has sort of more of a British influence or
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
It was actually nicknamed Little Britain at one point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right. And in terms of sort of favorite food or favorite dish, you know,
Oh,
that's
well, it's called Cuckoo and Flying Fish. Now, that also has a very interesting history because, and I know this happens in other parts of the world, but there is a species of fish that jumps and it extends its wings. So it doesn't actually fly, it soars over the water.
uh-huh.
And it caused quite a stir when people from the Caribbean came to the British Isles because people thought we were a bit doolally talking about flying fish, but they do exist. And the traditional carbohydrate is it's like the what did the French have not the French the Spanish have a very similar a very I forget what it's called. It'll come back to me later.
Yeah.
It's like a cornmeal. It's like a
Okay.
cornmeal, and the Spanish have a version of it that's much more coarse. Um, but the food developed again around the idea that you had to have very dense calorific food
Hmm.
to perform the work that needed to be done when you were out in the sun all day. So the food is very dense, very calorific throughout the whole Caribbean, not just Barbados. But in Barbados, the signature dish is cuckoo and flying fish. And
Cuckoo. What does
cuckoo,
cuckoo mean?
it's the cornmeal. It's a
Ah,
very fine grain cornmeal.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I forget what it's called. It's
Yeah.
the Spanish have a version of it begins with P. It's just
What?
not coming to me.
Peniata or isn't it called
No, no,
peniata?
no.
No,
It'll
no,
come
that's
to
not.
me later on. I'll
Yeah.
throw it in. But and that's on the vegetable that's usually served with is a cucumber pickle.
Okay.
So and okras. In Britain they call that lady fingers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
lady's
yeah.
fingers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so that's usually mixed into the cuckoo, and then the cucumber pickle is fresh, so it's with parsley and garlic and onion and lots of lime and salt, and oh, it's very tasty.
Oh yeah,
No, I'm
definitely.
hungry.
Yeah, we use okra a lot actually. And
Sorry, the cat just me.
oh, you've got a cat. We've got a cat
We've
visitor.
got three,
You
but
got three
he's
cats.
very loud. Sorry, you might hear him again.
Yeah, needs a lot of attention, eh?
Yes.
So lots of cats in Barbados as well.
Yes,
Did you grow up with
yes, they are.
cats?
Hmm?
Did you have a lot of cats when you were?
Yeah, well, actually, I grew up on a mini farm,
Oh,
kind of. We had pigs and sheep and goats and horses, and it was mostly livestock. We didn't really have
yeah.
fruits and vegetables per se. So sorry, the cat is really
Yeah,
over
yeah, yeah.
everything.
Well, it's on the podcast now. They understand these things. They know when there's something's
Sorry.
going on.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I grew up, you
Did you
know,
work on the farm? Were you expected
yeah,
to work?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I milked the cows and fed
yeah.
them and stirred the mash and fed them, and I used to go out with my stepfather, and we would go out. I didn't really like doing the early morning thing. I didn't do that very much.
No
But in
wonder
the
you said why a
evenings,
lot. No wonder you had all those why questions.
yeah, exactly. But in the evenings, it was one of the greatest joys I had with him, going out with him to tend to the animals, and we would do that most evenings. So that was really nice.
So
Spend that time
when
with
do
him.
you decide that farm life is not for you and you wanted like something else?
That's how much time do you have? Um, I kind of became a doctor because of different circumstances, not really anything to do with farming. Um, I I got pregnant when I was 17, and the whole world, well, my whole world kind of exploded when that happened, and
Planned or unplanned or
unplanned,
yeah, yeah,
unplanned,
yeah,
and everybody sort of uh, prepared my life for me when
yeah.
that happened. Everybody knew what was going to become of me, and I kind of didn't really like that. So I decided I was going to do something different, and it was going to be the exact opposite of what everybody said it would be. And becoming a physician was part of that decision in that journey. Um, it wasn't really something that was on my mind when I was growing up. I didn't think that that was my path. My grandmother did. She used to say it all the time. So clearly she knew something I didn't know. But yeah, after that happened to me, and I thought about what I wanted for myself and what I now wanted for my child, I decided that this was the course of action I was going to take. I was going to become a doctor. And it kind of followed on because originally I wanted to be a vet, but I found it was very difficult to understand that animals, can be really not cared for and be unwell. And I actually struggled with that a bit. So becoming a doctor was the next step. Once I worked that out after working in the RSPCA for a few years.
Yeah, yeah. That's quite difficult for us as human beings to understand how unkind we can be.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that played a major role in how I then um, grew as a person myself. Because when you're at the end, you're at the receiving end of all that unkindness and dismissal and that sort of negativity, you kind of make a decision to either believe it or not believe it. And when you make the decision to not believe it, how you then develop as a person and how your relationships with other people develop is completely different. It's completely different. And it was probably the best thing that happened to me because I was very directionless before that. But having this challenge and this other person in my life that I loved beyond measure just showed me a path that I don't think I would have seen before. So that was a real pivotal time for me. It's not a moment, it was years.
Yeah, yeah. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Oh, which bit? Which bit?
About being in the receiving end?
Um, well, it's really weird to be I never had the experience of having random strangers kind of stare at me with malevolence in their eyes and disappointment and dislike and the judgment that came along with it. I mean, most people have grown up with judgment in their lives. I don't think anybody hasn't, but it was the intensity of it and the regularity of it, and also where it came from. So it came from everywhere. It came from strangers, it came from family, it came from people who were supposed to be friends, and it it you I almost had to develop a water off a duck's back sort of outlook to life, where I just went, well, this is where I'm focused now, this is what I'm doing now, and I'm not really interested in anybody that doesn't allow me to follow that path, or anybody who's not interested in directing me along one that is congruent with the direction that I want for myself and my family. So it took some adjusting, but again, what it meant for me is, as looking back compared to where I am now, it always allowed me to try to see the bigger picture. It's very easy to look at somebody and make a judgment. And we all do that. As much as we would think that we don't like to do it, we all do that. And it's not about not making the judgment. It's about having enough insight to know that you're making the judgment and make the decision to put it aside and actually see what the evidence brings to you. And sometimes you actually have to go and look for that evidence. It doesn't always come to you. So that's something that's held me in very good stead over the course of my life. And again, I don't think I would have developed that had I not been at that back end of all of that animosity and negativity and judgment. So all in all, it's helped me. It's helped me be where I am today.
Yeah, yeah, and this was because of the unexpected pregnancy, and
Yeah.
yeah, 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 um, what made you shift that sort of mindset? Because you were quite young at the time. Was that something that
Yeah.
you've always had because you were quite, inquisitive and, a bit stubborn, and you had someone who you respected and yet were sort of fighting against on a regular basis? Did you develop that sort of over a period of time, or was there a
Um,
switch?
Part of that was, yes, inherently who I am as a person, but there were two major things that contributed to me developing that confidence and self-love for myself. And one of them was my grandmother and my mother, because my grandmother was one of the few people I understood could love unconditionally. And she loved she loved her family unconditionally. As far as she was concerned, I just did what human beings do. I procreated, I had a baby. She was very practical and pragmatic about it. And like I said, she'd always believed I was going to be a doctor anyway. I have no idea where she got that from. And she supported me in a very sort of quiet, nondescript way that buoyed me significantly. My mother gave me all the support I could ask for when I made the decision to go back to school, because I'd left school for a year to stay home with the baby. That was a choice I made. I wanted to do that. And when I decided what I really wanted to do with my life, she supported me 100%. And so did my stepfather. They were very pinnacle in my life. And having that force of love behind me allowed me to not just become this bitter person who just kept that with a chip on my shoulder, fighting with anybody and everybody. And that shift in that, well, not shift in attitude, that attitude then allowed me to be open to the people around me who brought me that positive energy. And all of a sudden, I lost a whole heap of friends. Yes, I did. But other friends came, ones who wanted to help with the baby, ones who wanted to help me study, ones who wanted to give me a ride to university and back. My daughter's pediatrician, I took her for her 6 weeks visit, and I said to the pediatrician, actually, no, I met her before I had the baby, because I was selling encyclopedias at the time. Yes, back in the day. And I sold her a set of encyclopedias, the most amazing woman, Dr. Patricia Innes. And in our conversation, I said to her, you know what, I've decided I wanted to be a doctor. And she was in private healthcare. And in Barbados, you have to pay for private healthcare if you don't have insurance. And I liked this lady so much. I took my daughter back to her for a 6-week visit, and I said, Dr. Innes is going to be my daughter's pediatrician. And that woman, she never charged me to see my daughter, not once. And I was confused. I didn't really understand what it was. And I wasn't sure what to make of it. And it's only years later that it dawned on me that this was her way of supporting me. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know anything about me, but she just gave me her faith. And it was something that just carried me. I didn't know that at the time, but it was one of those things that just came to me. And my mother always used to say, God doesn't come, but he sends, and I had all of these people being sent to me. But I also believe that I had to be open enough within my own heart to recognize these people and accept them into my life. So I cannot forget the impact these people have had on my life. And if I can do even 1/3 for even one person of what these people have done for me, I know I've done what I'm supposed to do on this earth.
Yeah, it's very difficult for us to accept this giving, when we're so ungiving to ourselves, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's also the receiving as well, because I'm sure you've met somebody that you wanted to give, but they were so closed that they just weren't open enough to receive it. And that's hard, because that means you open yourself up to people taking advantage of you, to having your trust abused. But for every one time that happens, if you focus on the times when it didn't happen, you'd realize that it's worth it to be open, to be receiving. And when you give, you receive, and you always receive more than you give, always.
So in that year when you took time off school, what was it like with you and the newborn? What was your what was that experience like?
Well, God doesn't come, but he sends. He sent me a beautiful baby. And I guess he knew that I didn't have a lot of support. So he sent me a baby that was very easy to take care of. Don't get me wrong, there were some very difficult moments, as any newborn, any parent can tell you. But I don't know, I just always wanted to be there for her. And it was 99.99% better that it was not. So
I mean, how did it change you as a woman, having that baby?
I don't know that it changed me per se. I think what it did was allowed me to have some place where I could focus all my love, care, and attention. And that was perhaps something that I needed. So in terms of changing me, what changed me was how I decided my life was going to go, the direction that I wanted. And what I wanted for her meant that I had to make those decisions for myself. So in that aspect, yes, it changed me. But did it change me as a person? I don't think it did. But what it did do was allow me to learn about myself in a way that I probably would not have done before. And if I'd become a mother 20 years later, I don't think the learning would have been the same.
So there's a
So
lot of focus there. You became more focused. It was more clear for you.
who I was and who I wanted to be became a lot clearer.
Yeah.
Yes, is true. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
That's not bad, you know. You saying true to me. Hey, what's
No,
going on
not
there?
bad at all. Not bad at all. No, no, she was my she was my rudder. She was, she set me on a course and a path that made me into a better person.
Yeah, yeah. And what was medical school? You did medical school in Barbados, I presume.
Well, the system at the time was you did your first non-clinical 3 years in Trinidad, which is another
Yeah.
island, and then you had the choice of coming back to Barbados for your last 2 clinical years. So I did a year at university first, which ended up being two because I got dengue fever and missed my
Oh
exams.
wow, wow.
So so I ended up
That's
taking
all the
2 years.
Trinidadians' fault. You know,
Yeah.
always blame it on the
Well,
Trinidad.
it was Barbados actually where that happened,
Ah,
where I did my pre-med years. So I lost a whole year because I missed out on my exams because I had dengue fever. But then after that, I went to Trinidad to study. And that was a wonderful experience. It was a struggle because again, I met a lot of resistance. People really struggled with the idea that I was, 21 with a child,
yeah.
and I was in medical school, and I still partied and had fun, and it was a real struggle for people to get their heads around that. Again, because
And you
people
love
have their.
that. You know, you love that when people struggle. You think, yeah,
Well, it's your journey, not mine.
yeah, 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 yeah. So it's like, yeah, go on, keep going. Yeah, I've enjoyed
you know,
myself.
it did challenge me because I was still very young in terms of understanding people and the nuance of people and why people do what they do and why they say what they say. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I was very confused because
yeah,
for me, in general, I took people for what they were.
yeah.
I didn't think about where they came from or what they looked like or how much money they had, or I just said, hey, are you a person? We get along, we don't get along. If we don't get along, that's fine. If we get along, great, let's be friends. But it wasn't like that. People made a lot of judgments about me and what they thought I should be and how I should behave. And
Mm, mm,
I had people even ask me, why are you even in medical school?
yeah,
Um, it was a conversation based around, you have no right to be here. You're a teenage mom. You don't get to live this life. So it was a struggle, but for that aspect, but for the most part, it was a really good time. And I met some incredible people who are still my lifelong friends and colleagues. Because I met people outside and inside medical school as well. And again, it helped shape my future to where I am now, and being able to connect with people when I coach on a completely different level, because the journey that I've taken is somewhat unique. And the challenges that I had to overcome and experience and find workarounds for, and ways to process this, allows me to work with people on a completely different level, a much deeper level than I don't think I would have been able to had I not had these experiences. So it's benefited me as an anesthetist sitting in, pre-assessment clinic, finding out why somebody wants to have this procedure done, and it's benefited me as a coach when somebody comes to me and says, I've got this, and I can, comfortably say to them, well, why? What does this mean to you? How will your life change? What's happening now? And that actually means something to me because I went through it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And what? How about the sort of the thing between Trinidad and Barbados? Did that sort of play a part, or not really? The differences, or there's no differences between Trinidad and
Oh, there are
Barbados?
many differences.
Uh-huh.
There are many, many, many differences. Um, yeah, again, one of my joys in life is to try new things, to be
Yeah,
adventurous, to get out there, to see
yeah,
how it's done, to learn more, to do more. And Trinidad is very different from Barbados. And I thoroughly enjoyed the fact that it was different from
definitely.
Barbados. And I fully immersed myself in the culture, the food, um, the people, my friends.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a really good time in Trinidad. Um,
So there's
and even
lots of
that,
positives in
oh
in
yeah,
doing
loads,
things that's
loads,
totally different. Yeah,
loads. And like I said, I met people out there who are still like family to me, uh, and these are non-medics as well. So it was really great. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I'm very glad I made the decision to go.
And when did you decide to leave the Caribbean and sort of train outside or work outside?
Okay, well, so yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Barbados is a small place. It's brilliant, but it's small. And the Caribbean is one, it's yes, there are many differences, but it's still one region. And I thought to myself with my sense of adventure, look, I'm going to be doing this for the next 30 or 40 years of my life. I'll take the opportunity to go outside and do anesthesia somewhere else, see how it's done somewhere else, have access to resources that we don't have. And it was a brilliant opportunity to take my daughter along and show her a different way of living, open up her horizons. And so you can have a different cultural experience and just different opportunities for the both of us. So it came about again because I was sitting there going, well, what else can I be doing with my life? What else can I learn? And at the time, it was very easy to migrate from the Barbados to the UK. It was a very simple process. I turned up and said, "Hey, I'm a doctor. I want to work here," and got an interview and got a job. So, but then we stayed.
Yeah.
That wasn't part of the plan, but we
I mean, what
stayed.
was it about the UK that sort of you felt, well, this is really good. I'm going to stay here.
Well, it was actually my college tutor, Dr. Riyad. I'd only come for a year, and I was in an SHO post, as they called it at the time, and he said, "Well, look, you're here for a year. Keep your brain going. Tick over. Do the FRCA, the part one." And I thought, "Yeah, okay, fine, I'll do that." So I passed it, and then he said, "Oh, that's really great. Well, now that you've passed it, you might as well apply for registrar post." And I thought, well, I don't know about that, but I'm not going to lose anything if I apply
Yeah.
and I don't get it. And I sent out 3 applications and I got one interview and I got the job. And he said, "Well, that's the next 5 years of your life taken care of because you have to finish your training. And by the way, you should probably do part two." And I thought, oh, well, okay. Yeah, right. Why not? Why not? And then I met my husband and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, once you meet your husband, that's it, You can't say no, you can't
I
say
can't say
why.
no. Because up until that point, I was still planning to go back to Barbados, but
I mean, the great thing about back in those days is that, you had like a master or a guru and you stayed with
yeah.
them or in that region for years and years
Mm.
and you just developed such a lovely relationship and it's like a one big family.
Yeah, he
Um,
was he was amazing. That my whole I did that SHO training in Dewsbury, Pinderfield, and Pontefract, and I worked with amazing consultants. And what was pinnacle for me working in that area, because I had just moved, and it was a matter of months before my stepdad died, and I had to go back to Barbados. And it was the first time I had really understood that it is possible for your colleagues to care about you personally. I mean, really personally. In Barbados, I learned a fantastic work ethos, about how to be a good, diligent doctor who cares for their patients. What I learned from them was, yes, we're all human and we need to take care of each other. And that was my first real experience of doctors caring for doctors.
yeah, yeah,
And that's where the name of my little foundation comes from, Doctors Caring for Doctors. And I really felt that when he passed away, the support I got from them as a department was unprecedented, and it changed my path, because I think if I hadn't been shown that care and support, I might not have coped well enough to stay. So that was very impactful for me. And it taught me pretty much a life lesson about being a physician in healthcare.
yeah. Some big eyes were looking out for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, you're totally right. Essentially, we are humans first and foremost before we are physicians, And, we need that human touch on a regular basis, even within the workspace. Do you think the cat's going to come in again?
That's what I'm trying to stop. I can hear his little bell going.
It's coming.
So
It wants the human touch, isn't it? Even cats want the human
they're
touch.
spoiled rotten. They're all three of them, and the dog. We have a greyhound as well, a rescue
They
greyhound. They're
must be
all spoiled.
thinking, how can I be human? But I can't, because I just love that caring so much.
They all have their own personalities. The one who comes in here, we laugh at him because he's the worst cat ever. He can't jump, he can't hunt. We think he's really a dog in disguise, and our dog is, she's a little prince. My friend calls her the Duchess. She's such a little princess. She walks around puddles. Can you imagine that?
Well, I guess there's some dysphoria there, isn't there? Sort of
Definitely. But yeah, the furry
species
friends
dysphoria.
the furry friends bring a lot of joy to our home, though. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And you're into interior design by the
Yeah,
looks of
yeah.
it. You've got a skull at the back there. You've got a teddy that's that's having a dump.
Oh, come on. He's sitting in a
Oh,
nice wicker chair.
and yeah, so it's really working, this thing about interior design.
Yeah, I even made this lamp here. Made that.
And you thought I was a nice guy, eh?
So my favorite thing is to go to the charity shop and upcycle things.
Ah,
And
right.
yeah, so the interior design thing came about. I didn't know I had a real propensity for interior design until we had our first home. And I started doing all this stuff with it, and it all kind of worked out. And me being me, I have to formalize everything I do. So I went and did an interior design degree because, well, as a doctor, that's what we do, isn't it? We have to validate everything that we do. So yeah, that's good fun. It's I've managed to turn that into a little side business, but I mostly just make gifts for friends and family when it's their birthday and Christmas and whatever. But every now and then I sell something and I go help somebody decorate their space. Maybe one day I'll make more of it, but at the moment it's a lovely creative outlet for myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, medicine can be very, you've got to work within a structure, and
Yeah.
it can get a bit stifling sometimes. So we all need our creative,
Definitely,
juices to be released. I mean, I like
definitely.
doing podcasts, because I'm interested in having conversations, and I try and bring it in to a certain extent during the sort of clinical work, but it's difficult because there's a prescribed structure that patients
There's a
expect
lot of
from you.
resistance, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I previously, when we do clinics, we do it in corridors, because you have so many patients. So you're kind of a bit reluctant to have the kind of conversation you want to have with the patient, because it's
Mm.
your own style. You want to use certain words, and I'd be honest with you. I mean, I do use colorful language with my patients. Um,
Well, you're a
and
colorful kind of guy, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I use a lot of colorful language, because it makes the patient at ease.
And it makes
Certain,
them laugh. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, whether that happens, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, when I'm in a good mood, they do leave kind of funny, and you can hear them saying, "Oh." So yeah, coming back to my point, once I have my own room where I can close the door, I feel so much more comfortable, because I can say whatever
Be
I
yourself.
want, be myself, because I'm always thinking, "Oh my God, what are they going to say?" you know
Yeah,
you know I always
yeah.
have that kind of sense.
That's a tough one for us. And this is one of the things that I struggled with when I was doing a lot of my training in medicine and in my personal life too. You've got your own values and you've got your own beliefs. And as doctors, we're always taught that the professional sanctum is no place for your own values and beliefs and who you are, and you're always trying to be somebody who you're not, or
Mm.
you're just trying so hard to fit in. I think one of our colleagues, Ross, he calls them medical zombies. You know, we must all
Yeah, yeah,
follow
yeah.
the path. And it was really funny when I first heard him say it, because my what I call it is cookie cutter doctoring. You know, we
Oh,
must all fit in this mold, and you know, and there's no room for personality and being different, and you know, and it's just not really the way to live. And we should
yeah,
appreciate that we're different. I
yeah,
mean, and the reality is you're never going to be everybody's cup of tea. You're always going to upset somebody, no matter who you are or what you do. And we all just have to try and, you know, have a bit more flex in our life. And it's about time that we get away from this in medicine. You know, we're not all the same. We come from different places with different experiences, and in every other community, that's considered a wonderful thing. In medicine, you know, you're considered an outlier and a troublemaker and a nuisance, and
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's a
it's
problem.
time for that to
Yeah,
change.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I understand, and I think for me, time was the biggest way of moving forward. You know, once they realized that, you know, you are different, but not because you're trying to cause problems or you know, cause issues or trying to disrupt things. It's just the way you are, and the work still gets done, and you're still, you know, um, clinically effective, I guess the word is.
Yeah, that's a good phrase.
Yeah, yeah. But you do it in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, why the hell do you end up in Qatar then? You know, because that's quite a
That's me
rigid
off on
system.
that's me off on another adventure again, isn't it?
You went from a fairly, you know, sort of open, free-ish, kind of, you know, efficient society and sort of medical system into
Well,
you know, culturally less diverse place.
yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, the Western world is pretty much the Western world, and even in the Caribbean, it's very Westernized. Although we have, you know, everything over there, we've got everybody and all kinds of ways of living. But it's just me going again. Hey, you know, there's another part of the world that I know nothing about,
Yeah,
that I want to see and know about, and Qatar presented a really pleasant opportunity for me, because it was going to give me an opportunity to do something professionally that I would never be able to do in the NHS, and that was be part of opening a whole new hospital.
mm,
So it was a new hospital, it was a completely new department. So that was a professional opportunity that I would never have again, I don't think. So that was a great pull for me. And of course, being in a community that I knew nothing about, where all I could do is learn more about this culture, and by default myself, I had no reason not to go, really. So yeah, that's my latest professional adventure, and it's been great. It's been fantastic. I mean, I can say that I opened a new hospital and a new department. I mean, not many of us can say that. So that was really quite fascinating and challenging and exciting. And the culture is they're very tolerant of Western ways of living
mm.
in Qatar. It's different to Saudi. It's not quite as liberal as Dubai. It's somewhere in between. It's very clearly is Islamic, and you know, right now it's Ramadan, and Ramadan Kareem, by the way.
Thank you.
So it's very easy to slot in there. You know, they ask you to be respectful and cover your shoulders and cover your knees and that sort of thing when you go into government buildings. And but you know, really, there's very little restriction on the way of life. And it's a beautiful place. They've got lovely beaches. They know that they're bringing in a community into their world, and they want that level of integration so we can function and build up the country itself. So there's a lot of concession to Western ways of living, and it's a very, very lovely work-life balance. If I'm honest, I have zero regrets going there, absolutely none, personally or professionally. And again, I've met a bunch of great people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as
So,
usual.
so what have you learned about yourself, about experiencing this new culture?
Um, I learned that I am really interested in people. That was something I didn't know about myself. It was something that I didn't honor in myself as a physician before, because I felt this constant hamster wheel sort of way of existing. Um, and I didn't have a lot of time to actually enjoy what it is that I enjoy about the world. And part of that is actually just being with people and talking to people. And I understood that that was something that was important to me, because suddenly I had the time to do it. Because when we got there, there were no patients yet, or we had just started getting patients. So there was a lot of time to self-reflect and to stop and to learn from other people. And that included the patients, and learn about their culture and their way of life, and how their expectations of how medical care is delivered to them. And I found that really, really exciting and exhilarating. And it brought me to the understanding that I really, really enjoy spending time with people. I mean, I knew that about my family and friends, but I didn't realize that I felt that way about, pretty much the whole world. And that was really quite pleasant, because I felt I became so much more comfortable talking to random people and strangers. And although I had that in my life growing up in the West Indies, it's a different level that I felt having moved to Qatar. And that is how that extended into my coaching as well. Because all of a sudden it was this curiosity to help you get to wherever it is you want to go. And I didn't know that that was something important to me until I went to Qatar and had the opportunity and the time to really enjoy that experience.
And what did you realize that was not so good in you from your experience in Qatar?
Um, I still had a lot of needs for external validation
Yeah.
that I didn't realize. And that was something that held me back. And when I look back, knowing that now, I realized how much further I could have been if I didn't have that belief system within me. That I needed, it goes back to, oh yes, I enjoy interior design. Oh, but I need to prove that I'm good at interior design. Let's go get a degree and do it. Right? There was this constant need to prove myself, that I didn't realize I had. And because I felt I need to prove myself, if I was ever in a situation where I didn't feel I had that proof, I would back away from it. So I wouldn't step forward into my own power as a person, because I believed that I couldn't. And that was a little bit of a shock to me, because I didn't know that about myself. I really honestly didn't know that about myself.
And
And it
then
was really surprising.
and then you can work it out going backwards, like, oh, I understand why I did this, and
Mm,
this happened to me,
mm,
and this happened to me, and you
yeah,
kind of,
yeah, yeah. And that was really uh it was a very sobering thing to face.
mm, mm, yeah,
you know, as somebody, I'm now I'm now a grandmother, and here I am going, oh well, clearly there's still things about you need to learn and sort
yeah,
out. So yeah, that was an interesting experience.
yeah,
I thought I was just having fun for a really long time.
yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah. No,
realizing that it was a cover and a bit of procrastination and a bit of self-doubt. And it's like, oh no, I didn't do that because I didn't want to.
yeah,
No, you didn't do
yeah,
that because you think you could. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a humbling experience, and you know that's what life is about, really, being humbled regularly, and so realizing shit. Ooh.
Yeah,
Back to the
do
drawing
better.
board.
Do better. You're doing okay, but you can do better.
Yeah. Back to the drawing board, definitely. Well, I mean, it's been absolutely fascinating hearing you and listening to you, and I know that you do a lot of work elsewhere, and you got sort of Facebook groups, and you know you're quite active outside the medical sphere. Um, my last question would be, what would you like to be remembered for? Or, you know, when
I
all's
would
said and done.
I would like to be remembered as somebody who was compassionate, adventurous, and somebody who truly believed that authenticity is always the way to go. I want people to look at, when people look at my life, I want them to go, yep, she knew what she wanted and she got it done. Good
Yeah,
on her.
yeah. And in terms of kind of your work, what would it be? Doctor, coach,
Oh,
mother? What would be like the cornerstone?
oh, that's a difficult one. Um, I I think I'd rather than refer to it as a cornerstone, I'd prefer to refer to it as a foundation,
Yeah,
because a foundation, it's spread out. There's no one part is more important than the other. A cornerstone means if you lose your cornerstone, everything falls. There's no
yeah,
part of me that if I lost it, I would fall. You know, it's about laying the foundation about who you are as a person. As a doctor, I know that I am dedicated to providing the best care for my patients that I can,
yeah,
and 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 that is not something that is separate from the rest of my life. As a coach, I want to turn up the best way that I can for my clients, and I want to do that as a mother, a friend, a wife. Uh, well, my parents are gone now, so but I still have people who I call my adopted parents. So for me, it's about laying a foundation
yeah,
and truly being comfortable with who you are and recognizing that you're not perfect. That's okay. But you don't use that as an excuse. It's about always moving forward and thinking, what could I do but better? How could I serve people better? How can I be a better keeper of my brother? And that is the ethos for everything in my life. How can I be a better person so that somebody else can have a better way? And that's what you do as a doctor, and that's what I do as a coach, and that's what I do for my friends and my family, and that's most importantly what I try to do for myself.
yeah, yeah.
um, because I think this is a really tough one for everybody, not just doctors. Treat yourself as you would want somebody to treat you,
Yeah.
and we don't do that for ourselves. So yeah, so that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a very, very noble venture for sure. And you know, there's lots of facets um to that. So, you know, absolutely. It's been a great pleasure. How can people get hold of you? What's the best way?
Oh, well, if you key in Doctors Caring for Doctors,
Yeah.
you will find me. We are on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And we've got a lovely little website. And I'm just in the process of launching a great little online wellness program for us physicians. So, and it's all under Doctors Caring for Doctors. So that's the easiest way to find me, via email, LinkedIn, Facebook, on the website. It'll all be there.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much, Pauline.
Thank you so much. It's great talking to you. Thank you. I appreciate it.